What would be the best piece of advice you could give to a player who wanted to improve their stud game?
Probably just to keep playing, see a lot of hands. I think, table experience is the best experience you can get, so you just got to put in time. I don't think it really matters the limit. You can, you can play your own game, and no matter what limit you're playing, if you're playing it as small as possible, 10, 20, or 5, 10 even, or whatever I think here they have a 1 to 5 stud.
What type of starting hand should you be playing?
I try to play pairs with a kicker that's a face card if possible. Live cards. Instead, you want to play as many live cards as possible. Like if you have a 6 up and you have a pair of 6s with, like, let's say a 10, and there's 2 10s out and there's 1 6 out. You're really in a bad spot to someone else who raises in front of you, because although you do have a pair, if they have a bigger pair, most of your cards are dead. So for you to make 4 of a kind, one of them obviously 5s or 10s is not going to happen, and even a full house is going to be really tough because there's only 4 of each card in the deck. So if you have 2 of them and one of them is out, or 2 of them are out, you're really putting yourself in a bad situation.
What is the best starting hand instead?
I'd probably rolled up, which means 3 of the same exact cards, trips of the same card.
And is it a good idea to slow play your hand if it's rolled up, or should you bet it?
A lot of times it's all situational, and it depends on how the table's playing. If the table's playing fast or slow, I usually tend to slow play my rolled up hands until about 5th Street, and then I try to make a move with them. Depending on the scenario, if the table's just playing really, really crazy, then I'll play them fast. If the table's playing a little bit slower, I'll try to play them slower. What
types of starting hands should you avoid playing at all?
Like a gut shot straight, like let's say a 5, 6, 8. It's you have to hit if you don't hit a 7 on 4th Street, which is the 4th card, then you're really putting yourself in a bad situation to chase down a hand looking for a gut shot card.
Is bluffing a big part of the game?
Bluffing sometimes can be a part of the game. In stud, if you have a bunch of big cards up, you have a small pair, your hands can be, very deceiving due to the fact that you do have 2 cards down. So sometimes you have to bluff. Sometimes to win a pot in any poker game, you have to bluff it, just because otherwise, you have nothing and you've missed all the way straight through. And the only way for you to actually win the pot is to bluff it. So sometimes bluffing, comes into play.
I've heard that the lowest card in your hand should always be higher than the other door cards that are showing. Is that true?
The lowest card in your hand should be higher?
The lowest card in your hand should be higher than everyone else's cards that you can see, like, right from the get-go. Is that an accurate statement?
No. I mean, any poker is situational. If you have 2 4s in the hole with a king on top, and there's no 4s out and there's no kings out, your hand can really be disguised. Now, if you have pocket 4s, obviously someone on the board is going to have higher than a 4. So, I mean, everything's in poker most of the time is situational, and in 7-card stud, you want to try to be as sneaky as possible to be able to hide your hand so that people won't know what you have. Which means when you have pocket pairs and the other 2 cards are still live, like if you have pocket 4s and you haven't seen a 4 out, now you hit a 4 somewhere on 3rd through 6th Street and nobody knows what you have, your hand is really disguised. So, I mean, having bigger or smaller cards doesn't really matter, but you want to have, if you're playing a flush, you want to try to have the ace or the king high flush, as opposed to playing, a 10 high flush where it looks like someone else could have a bigger flush than you.
If you have an ace showing from the beginning, is it always a good idea to raise?
Not necessarily, because, how many times are you going to actually have split aces there or a pocket pair? I mean, if the table's playing tight, you have a tight image, you can raise a lot of the times with it, but, an ace is not going to scare people away if every time you have an ace you raise. Now they're going to come after you, and the times that you do have aces, they're still going to come after you. So not necessarily. If you fold aces, more often than not, like let's say somebody raises in front of you and you have ace 7 deuce, and 7-card stud high hand, that hand is absolutely garbage. So you don't have to raise with having a door card as an ace.
Why is it important to remember what cards have been folded by other players at the table?
Because if you're going for a straight draw or 2 pair, if you have a pair in your hand, you don't want to improve your hand, which is what you're always trying to do. You don't want to have dead cards. You don't want to be chasing dead cards. For example, if you have, let's say you start off 5, 6, 7, but there's 2 4s out and there's 2 8s out. Those are your straight cards. Now, you're drawing to perfect, which means there's 2 of each one left. So in that situation, you have to pay attention to what's going on the board and who raised and who folded and what they folded.
If you get to 4th Street and you only have 1 pair, is that a good time to get out of the hand?
No, not necessarily, because the average, if I'm not mistaken, usually more often than not, 2 pairs is going to win a hand. Any 2 pairs is going to win a hand, on the average. So 1 pair with live cards is, it doesn't matter if you have deuces to whatever. You obviously would love to, have the bigger pair than what you think your opponent has. But even having a smaller pair doesn't, is not really that much of a concern. If you have a bigger kicker or if your board starts to come big cards, now if you hit one of those cards, your 2 pairs is going to be better than whatever 2 pair the other person can make. So not necessarily. Any hidden pair is really good to play when everybody else's door cards, don't match your pair, and your door card is also live. It's it's not a bad situation.
How should you deal with it if there's a very aggressive player at your table?
Well, that's usually me, so I don't know I don't know if I can answer that question properly. But you just have to wait for cards and try to play good cards against them.
Is aggression very important in stud?
In stud you really have to put it's not a lot of checking. You're mostly betting, and you want to put the pressure on people because if they're going to draw out, if you think you're starting with the best hand, and they're going to draw out on you, you want them to pay for it. So, most of the time, if you think you have the best hand, you're supposed to bet and stud. It's not too much checking unless you just have, quads or something, or if you're rolled up, you can check call in certain spots, playing the angles.
I also heard that you should be looking for excuses to fold in stud. What do you think about that?
I don't know if I agree.
You don't like that statement?
No, because live cards in the stud game is a lot of people I've seen fold. Like let's say someone raises with a king door card and they have 2 8s and they have a queen in the hole, and the person raises with a king and they have a pair of 8s with a queen and all your cards are live. I've seen people fold that scenario because they know that they're behind already. So why chase to make 2 pair? But it's a 7-card game. And, if you're going to fold every time you have a pair, I think it's going to be harder for you to win. There are plenty of players who are winning players who do that. But I have a little bit more gamble to me, and I want to mix it up a little bit and see how the people are playing and seeing what kind of cards they have. So a lot of times I'm gonna if I have a medium pair and I think they have a bigger pair, they're representing a bigger pair, I'm probably going to chase them for a little while, for at least 2 cheaper cards before it gets more expensive to see what unravels.
What would you say is the strongest aspect of your stud game? Is it your aggression?
Just my ability to try to play somewhat solid. I'm not chasing that. I'm not going to chase, I'm not going to put myself in situations where I'm really drawing to a minimal amount of cards. I'm going to always try to be drawing to, I want all my cards to be live in stud. It's not always going to happen that way, but like if I'm drawing if I have 3 cards to a flush, I don't want to see 3 of the same suit out, or even sometimes it depends on who raises and who's in the game and how the game's playing. I probably don't even want to see 2 clubs out. Because now I'm drawing to, instead of drawing to, 9 live cards, I'm only drawing to 7. And if I do or don't have a straight draw with it, also would depend on the situation as to what cards are out. Stud is really, finding a pattern of how people play and trying to exploit their mistakes and, playing hands that are as live as possible.
So do you think stud is your strongest game?
Well, I enjoy playing stud, and it was my first game. Is it my best game? I don't know. My No Limit game, I think, has evolved to be, pretty decent. But I do enjoy playing stud, and I'm not scared to play. I don't know. It's a tough question.